Okay, why don't we go ahead and get going? I'd like to thank everybody for coming and joining us today for this webinar series from the Association of Osteopathic Graduate Medical Educators. My name is Dr. Tom Mohr. I'm the Dean and Chief Academic Officer at the Idaho College of Osteopathic Medicine and the DIO of the new Mountain States Institute for Graduate Medical Education Research. And I'm joined today by my colleague, Marcia Sellner, who's the Assistant Dean of Graduate Medical Education at the University of the Incarnate Word School of Osteopathic Medicine in San Antonio, Texas. She's also the DIO of the Texas Institute for Graduate Medical Education Research. Marcia and I have had the privilege of working together for a number of years in the GME world, both at Rocky Vista University and then at UIW. It's a pleasure to be co-hosting this with her, even though we're about 1,500 miles apart in our respective states. So thanks again for joining us, and we'll just kind of dive into this. But before we start, we want to do a poll. I see that there's about 320 some folks that are on the line here, and it would really help us if we were able to find out a little bit more about who you are, and that will help us to talk about a little bit of what we're going to be discussing. So I'm going to put a poll up here, and hopefully everybody can see this. We'd just be really interested to see if you could say who you are. If you are a medical student, go ahead and tag in your OMS year. If you're a program director, program coordinator, or COM faculty or administrator, and a GME faculty or a DIO. And if you could go ahead and do that now, that would be really helpful for us. And we'll give you just a second. While you're plugging those things in, we'll just to let everybody know, if you do have any questions, feel free to type them into the chat area or the Q&A area, and we'll kind of watch those as we go along. And hopefully, we're going to have enough time at the end to answer some questions as we go through. So everybody go ahead and put their final answers in, and I'm going to hit in poll, and hopefully this will give us the answers. And I'm going to go ahead and share the results so you can see. So it actually looks like there's quite a few of our medical students that are on here, and we'd like to welcome you, and thank you for coming coming and tuning in. The major focus of this is actually for residency directors and residency programs, but hopefully you'll get a little bit of an idea of what's going on in the heads of the residency programs that our students are going to be applying to as you go through the next process. I see that there's some COM faculty and administrators that are on there, and I know everybody's trying to figure out how do we best advise our student doctors as they're getting ready to go through the match, and we'll talk about some of those things as well. So thank you again for participating in the poll, and we're going to go ahead and dive in here. I've listed the agenda up there, but we're going to go ahead and start talking, and we'll let Marcia take the next slide.
Okay, just a little bit of background. Thank you everybody for joining us this afternoon. We're glad you're able to make it. Our pre-pandemic video interviews, to put it in content, is last year at the National Conference of AACOM, AOGME, Dr. Mohr and I did a presentation on video interviews for residency applicants in Washington, D.C. And at the time, I believe we probably had about two dozen participants in our session. And you fast forward to today, a year later, with everything that's happened. So we're really grateful that you all were interested in listening to this. I know that the landscape is changing, and so we hope that you find a lot of this helpful as you move forward and try to navigate this interview season for the upcoming residencies. So Tom, do you want me to tell you just to do the next slide? One of the things that we took into consideration early on was the cost of doing residency interviews, not only for students, but for the programs. And I think this is going to become a very important factor as we start to come out of the pandemic and whatever the new normal is going to look like. As institutions look at their revenue stream and how it's changed and how it will change in the future. So I won't read through all of these. You guys can see them up on the screen, but they were all aspects that we took into account when we originally chose to do virtual residency interviews. At the onset, we picked Third Friday, which is a scheduling platform to have our interviews scheduled through. We had changed over later on and used the ERA schedulers for a host of reasons. It just seemed to work better. But one of the things that we did at that time is we had our applicants introduce themselves about 30 to 35 seconds. And from that, we asked them to include their name, their hometown, the medical school that they're attending, and a little bit about why they chose that particular specialty that they were applying for, so that we kind of got a sense right off the bat for them, other than just that picture that you get with their application material.
So while introductory videos just give you a little snapshot as to what that applicant may be like, the other type, there are several different types of videos, and asynchronous videos or recorded videos are one of the other ones. And many of you may know that the AACOM actually did a several-year pilot of what they call the standardized video interview, and they were specifically for emergency medicine residency programs. Over the course of 3 years, at no cost to the applicant, they were given a way to log on and to record a video interview that was then used as a screening tool. And they did quite a bit of research on this, looked at all the data, and ultimately they found out that that this recorded, what they call the standard video interview, was a reliable and valid assessment of the behavioral competencies that also don't disadvantage individuals or groups. And so they really looked at how this was complementary to what residency directors would be looking for as far as the academic metrics, and they found out that this was working really well, and then they dropped the whole program. Interestingly enough, they made the decision not to offer the SVI for ERAS application cycle, predominantly because of lack of interest among the emergency medicine community in continuing to use and research that program. I've not heard whether in the current pandemic environment if they're interested in trying to revitalize that, but it's interesting. They did get a lot of research on that, and again, that is an asynchronous type of a video where you record the video in advance with preset questions, and then the reviewers watch it later.
The Tigner experience, we're a relatively new medical school, and we have been in the development of new residency and fellowship programs from the onset. So a lot of the reasons that we decided to launch our platform virtually centered around funding decisions being made very late in the decision-making process. And additionally, as we transitioned our program's accreditation from AOA to ACGME, we found, because of the dates that the RRCs meet, that often our accreditation decisions were made weeks before rank order deadline. So both of those coupled together facilitated the use of us utilizing a Zoom platform for interviews. Again, like I had mentioned earlier at the onset, the first year we did use the Third Friday platform and found that it wasn't as reliable as we had hoped for. So what we have found since then is that the scheduler that's located in ERAS works really well. And how we've utilized that in the past is, once the dates have been determined for interviews, those are all entered into the scheduler, into ERAS. And then usually the program coordinator will send out a mass email to all of the candidates that they want to interview, and then they would allow them to go in and schedule the date and time that works best for them. This seemed to work really well, and once the dates were all set, they could go in and create the Zoom invites, and they would be sent to all the candidates once they had confirmed the date and the time they were able to interview. The only downside to that was oftentimes, because of things changing, and they always do, there'd be some shuffle as to dates, and then it caused a little bit of confusion, not only on the program side, but the candidate side. So that might be something to look at going forward, how to set those up. Once those were all the appointments were added to the calendar, a online video was created, and that was the purpose of that, was to answer the most frequently asked questions that we all get during during the interview process. You know, about the city the program's located in, the institution, what type of rotations, where they're located, and how that all works together. We found this really helpful, and it was time saving, especially when you're looking at 30 to 40 minutes. That would be a chunk of time you wouldn't be taking to have to go over and review that information with the applicants.
Sorry, there we go.
What we did at the onset, we would set up 7 questions that we use for all of our applicants. They were the same questions throughout. They were, once the interview process started, the applicants were notified that we were recording the session. And the reason for that was for the faculty that weren't able to be part of that initial interview process, even if it was just to listen in, they would be able at a later time to access that recorded information and review it. And that was also helpful when you go to have a rank order meeting, if you wanted to pull up an aspect about a candidate that you may have forgotten over the passage of time. Again, the interviews would last between 30 and 45 minutes. And once those were finished, that we had finished asking our question, there would be an opportunity for the applicants to ask further questions if they had any.
And so part of this was that this was a live interview, but because it was often difficult for us to get a whole bunch of the clinicians together to do a mass interview, we would do a one-on-one interview, and we would record those, make it available so that the other members of the interview committee would be able to watch it at a later time when it was convenient for them.
Exactly. We had really good outcomes for first time right out of the gate. We did experience technical difficulties sometimes. I think we've all kind of encountered that in the last month or two that we've been working remotely for a whole list of different reasons. The applicants did really appreciate it, because as you get closer, especially to the end of interview season, and they're up against the wall, and they're looking at their finances, they're like, yes, if this is another opportunity and an option for us, they were very appreciative of that. And the faculty that weren't able to take part in that appreciated having the flexibility when they had time away from their clinical responsibilities to stop and take a look at those interviews. Again, real quickly, the pros and cons of video interviews. We've kind of touched upon this, and I won't read through all this, but one of the cons, and I think, and we'll talk a little bit about this down a little bit further in our webinar, the ability for applicants to be able to sell themselves and the program to be able to sell itself. And we've got some aspects and thought process that we can address some of those things that I think everybody's encountering as they're trying to figure out what this is going to look like as we get closer to interview season.
Yeah, and so that was our experience working with this with Tigmer down in Texas. It worked well, but honestly, as soon as we, in subsequent years, when we got the ability to go to live interviews, we did move to live interviews. At the end of the day, it was a much better way to be able to showcase our program, try to make sure that our applicants really understood the value of coming to our program, and gave us a better ability to fully assess them. But now, we are in the pandemic area, hopefully getting close to the post-pandemic area. So what does this mean for us today as graduate medical educators and as medical students applying for residency programs? Well, you're all, I'm sure by now, familiar with the Coalition for Physician Accountability, or the CPA. This is a kind of a loose confederacy of multiple different national organizations. I'm honored to sit on one of their panels, and as is Alenta and others within AACOM and AOGME, and they've been putting out a number of white papers and recommendations over the last couple of weeks. And the one most germane to this talk here is their recommendation that I have listed here, that all programs commit to online interviews and virtual visits for all applicants, including local students, rather than in-person interviews for the entire cycle. And I got to tell you, this gave me a little bit of heartburn at first, because I'm like, wait a minute, if I have a base student in my hospital, why wouldn't I interview them in person anyway? Because they're there. But that's not really what the recommendation is asking about. You know, before we did this webinar, a number of you had submitted questions that had come to us beforehand, and so when you see the red question mark, we're going to go through some of those questions. And several people asked this: hey, we see what the CPA has recommended. Is it a mandate? Do we have to do it? Well, at the end of the day, the Coalition for Physician Accountability is a recommending body. It is a body that's made up of AACOM and AOA and NBOME and AOGME and AAMC and the Match, ARIS, everybody that's in there. But at the end of the day, the CPA doesn't have any teeth. It's not saying that you have to do this. They don't control our accreditation like the ACGME does. Or COCA does for our medical students, our medical schools. So no, it's not a mandate. You don't have to do it. And it's uncertain at this time how many of our programs across the country are going to comply. It is causing a good amount of uncertainty. There's been some recent studies or informal polls, even within AACOM, that a number of the hospitals and even some of the schools are saying, yeah, we get that. We get why they said that, but it's not really going to fit in for our circumstances and in our region, our location. So it'll be interesting to see where we go with this. Why did they say we should do all of them? The big question is, you know, how big of a deal is it to switch between virtual and live interviews? And I think that we all have to be concerned that there's going to be a resurgence of the pandemic over the next couple of months. And if it does happen, it's highly likely that it's going to happen right smack dab in the middle of residency application and recruiting season. And so I think that the big concern here is trying to make sure that there's a standardized process where everybody's treated in the same way. And if early on those folks that happen to get to do a live interview, or those that are base students there get a live interview, and then we have to switch to all video interviews, then there will be an inconsistency, and some would be concerned that that would disadvantage or unduly advantage some folks. So that's why the CPA says, look, our recommendations is commit right now to doing all video interviews. And so that's part of what we're all trying to figure out. Okay, if we follow those recommendations, what do we do? Marcia?
So depending on what platform you pick, may or may not denote what kind of technical issues you're going to have. I think across the board, depending on whether it is Zoom, whether it's WebEx, whether it's GoToMeeting, whether it's Skype, you're going to experience technical issues no matter what. We have predominantly used Zoom here at UIW-SOM, and it's worked really well. We've adapted quickly. We've got up to speed. And people have been very graceful as to setting up meetings, and if things go awry or your internet connection drops, you just pick back up where you were at and continue on. So we've had really good luck using the Zoom platform. And one of the aspects of the Zoom platform are the breakout rooms, and that's a really wonderful feature to be able to split your Zoom meetings up into 50 different separate sessions. The meeting host can choose to split the participants of the meeting into these separate sessions automatically, or they can be done manually, and you can switch between sessions at any time. You can start out creating your breakout rooms by pre-assigning your participants to breakout rooms when you schedule a meeting, or you can do it once the meeting has started. You can move participants around automatically. You can start them in one room and allow them to remain in the main session and then move them over into a breakout room, close that out after a few minutes, and then they're all automatically put back into the main session. So it's really worked well with us. And some of the things that we've looked at as we're trying to set up how our virtual interviews would look, how we'd want to set up starting at the onset. Everyone comes together. There's an orientation and overview with the program director, maybe some type of video clips, introductions, have you, and then you break out into separate breakout rooms to do those applicant interviews. And at the end of that, you come back together maybe for a virtual tour. Maybe you're going to have additional conversations with residents or fellows that are already in the program. The other thing that we've utilized also is our resident mixers, and they're usually the night before, and that would be an aspect that you could set up the evening before for a period of time for those people that are available, or even incorporate that into your day for your residency interview and just extend that out at the end of the day. So there's all different ways that you can look at setting these up.
And that really kind of goes into what a number of the folks ask in their questions. What will interviews look like virtually? And much of what Marcia just talked about is one way that you can set it up. At my institution, we use WebEx. It does many of the things that Zoom does, although I do tend to like Zoom better. For those of you who didn't see on the chat, yes, we will be sharing these slides with you. And on the previous slide, I put in links there that will take you to tutorials on how to set up those chat rooms. And so it takes a little bit of understanding to figure out how to do that. But whether you're on Zoom or on WebEx, going into those chat rooms is something that's really important to be able to do that. And it's out of the scope of our talk here, but there's a tutorial that's on there. A couple of them, it's hard to tell for sure whether they truly have the ability to do chat rooms. So what do the interviews look like virtually? Well, this is one of those things that's going to be different for everybody. And I think that this is one of those things, there's a lot of anxiety both for the programs and for our applicants because there's this unknown. We kind of have a general idea of what an interview usually looks like. And I think that the biggest advice that we have for programs is to adapt what you usually do to the platform as much as you can. If your focus is on more interaction and those kind of things, try to incorporate that into the video process as you go. And for the applicants, really focus on the interaction as opposed to the platform. See this completely as an interview and really try to find every way that you can to get your own personality across. And we'll talk more about that as we go through the rest of the day or this webinar. There are some, as far as the interview, I have the video of one of the interviews that I did, but we don't have time to watch that right now. I just mentioned that you could really really decide your own format. You know, at one point we were just doing a single interview that was live and recorded. You could do it either way. Do remember that if you're recording a session, you need to make sure that you let the applicant know beforehand that it's being recorded. I made sure that we sent that out in the initial invite. Please note this will be recorded. And then at the beginning of every session, I would say, just to let you know, we're recording this so other members of the interview team can see this at a different time. I think that covers your bases to make sure you don't run into any problems there. You can decide on multiple interviews, and you can do back-to-back interviews if you need it. Oh, somebody, Linda had asked about whether you had required a release. We did not use a release. I think that there may be some folks out there that in the legal world that would say that you needed to do some type of release. We made sure that we said it would only be utilized internally, and we stuck to that. So we kept all of them on an internal Google Drive so that they couldn't get out or get leaked or anything along those lines. So again, deciding your own format, you can decide on group sessions. You can use these breakout rooms if you want to. We'll talk in a few minutes about the virtual tours and the ideas of doing live or recorded introductions as well. And we'll give you some tips on some of those things. Whoop, that's part of the video, but we'll move on from that one. So if anybody has been watching on the PDWS listserv lately, there's been lots and lots of folks that are really interested in getting templates for the interview. We did use a template. We'd used the seven question template that we had decided so we could do some standardization across our video interviews. And that way we knew that if I was the one doing the interview or Marcia was doing the interview or one of our other ones, that we would at least hit the basic questions. And then we would ask some other questions along the line as well. I think people are getting way too focused on the template. Ask the questions that you would normally ask. Don't focus on the format, focus on the content. And you don't really need to reinvent the wheel over and above what you would usually do. So you're welcome to these questions if you want it, but I don't think that the template is the key. Try to adapt what you do as you go along.
Absolutely. So technical difficulties, we won't spend a lot of time on this, but I think if we were to do a poll right now, ask everyone if they've experienced technical difficulties in the last month or two, the majority would say yes. I know just this morning I was experiencing technical difficulties myself. I think the one thing that we need to keep in mind is that we're all adapting to new innovations as we move forward, and it's the best thing is to practice patience until someone can come back up online. And just remember the one thing, not to judge someone if they're having difficulties trying to get their equipment to work. We strongly suggest the biggest thing is to practice before you actually are involved in any type of residency program interview, especially in a virtual nature where you're relying on technology. But it happens sometimes, and sometimes it's beyond your control. So, you kind of expect the unexpected and you move on, but just don't judge anyone by the fact that you may be encountering technical difficulties.
Yeah, there were times that we'd find that the video just wasn't working or it was causing such a problem, and we would give up and say, let's just do this on audio. Not ideal, and again, then you have that inconsistency, but sometimes it just wasn't going to work any other way, and we wanted to move forward with the process. So we did have a question from Katie about, did we have any concerns about applicants recording the virtual interview session? So generally only the host is able to do the recording from within the product. You should all be, I think you should all be able to see that this is being recorded right now. At least I can see that it's being recorded. That doesn't stop them from holding up their iPhone or whatever and recording what's going on as a part of it. I didn't personally have any concerns about that. I think that the biggest issue with anything like that is if you have any concerns that you're crossing any of the lines guidelines on inappropriate questions in an interview setting that our HR people would say, don't ever ask that question. Those would be the only issue. Could that be a concern? I suppose it could be. It wasn't anything that we encountered, at least as far as I know, that we encountered in our process. So one of the biggest downsides of doing this whole video thing is how do we sell our residency programs to our applicants, and how do our applicants get a good feel for what the program looks like? Because so much of that is a gut feeling, our gut feeling that you as an applicant are going to be a good fit, and as an applicant, that gut feeling that this is going to be my home for the next 3 years. And there's no real easy way to do that virtually. Promotional videos are one of the ways that you can do that. And this is one of the things that Marcia mentioned earlier that we did. We did about a 10-minute promotional video. We didn't use any expensive equipment, it was, it looked like a DIY, but it got the word across to the applicants a little bit about who we are, what drives us as a residency program, what are the unique features about our program that stands out from other places. In general, our applicants, they just want to see thoughtful, trustworthy content because they're trying to make a decision. I know half of you on this call are applicants, and you're trying to scratch your head going, how do I know that this is the program for me? So I think it's up to us as program directors to do everything we can to try to get that message across. Why are we unique? Why would we be a good fit for our applicants? Because this is, of course, a two-way road for all of us. How that information is delivered is less important than kind of being authentic and transparent in what you're delivering. It's still not going to be as good as being there in person and being able to show you that, but you got to do the best that you can do. This is actually the promo video that I did. I won't actually show it to you right now, but I actually just propped up a camera in front of my wall in my office and got a little bit of video software that was able to put a couple of pictures behind me. This is probably the most basic form of a promo video you can do. Now, what we did, and Dr. Misra had asked the question, how did we host the online video? We put it on YouTube. You can do a private YouTube channel that you put the link on there, and then we would just send that link out to the folks that are interested that we were inviting. If anybody wants to take the PowerPoints that are going to be posted to the site and click on that little blue button, you'll actually see the whole video that we put together a couple of years ago for our Laredo residency programs. And it's basic, I will tell you. Vimeo does a good job with this. There are some other online platforms that will allow pretty easy upload, especially if you're talking about a 10, 20, 30-minute video. It's not going to be much to be able to get that on there. So what would we do better if we were putting together a new promo video? Again, it's not so much about fancy equipment, but we would probably try to do some interviews with a few more people other than me, because I'm really boring to listen to, as you're finding out right now. And put in some more videos and pictures as we went along with it. If your hospital has a PR marketing division, they probably have marketing videos that they could adapt for you. Some are more likely to do that than others, but I would certainly try if you can. Same thing goes for virtual tours. How do you give people a tour? And how do you make it meaningful? I mean, those of you who have given tours and those of you students who have been on them, you know that after your third or fourth hospital tour, all hospitals essentially look alike. There's an ER, there's a hospital room, there's a labor and delivery, there's an MRI machine in there somewhere. You want to try to do the best that you can to showcase your hospital without making it look like every other hospital that's out there. You can use still pictures. If the best you can do is are still pictures, that's fine. Video's fine, but it's problematic to be walking down the hallway with patients and a video camera. That doesn't usually fly. So ask your hospital PR department to assist if you can. See if there's any way that they can tailor it to the GME program. Some of your programs already have promo videos that you use on your website. Something like that can work as well. You know, your applicants will likely see many hospitals try to highlight it. And one of the things that a lot of people don't know about is that there are actually companies out there that create virtual tours. Many of your hospitals already have them because they want to show a virtual tour to prospective patients. You may be able to use the ones that are already out there. Some of them look like when you're buying a house, when you can actually walk through a three-dimensional house, prospective house. You could do that with a hospital as well. So all things to think about as far as the virtual tours are concerned.
You know, and this is an interesting slide. You talk about what's lost or what's hard to gauge in a virtual interview, and it's that non-cognitive attributes, your behavior. How do you gauge empathy, professionalism? How do you gauge collaboration on a video interview? And I think some of the focus is going to be on how the questions are asked to capture those aspects during a video interview, such as, for example, tell me about a stressful situation you experienced in medical school and how you handled it. I know one that I always like to ask is, tell me about a time that a patient made an impression on you and why they were a memorable patient that you encountered during a rotation. There is a whole host of questions like that that you can practice ahead of time, or you all can incorporate into your video questions to gauge that aspect that you're not able to because it's not an in-person interview. And opportunities for social gatherings or informal meetings. I had mentioned earlier about the time set aside to meet with the fellow residents that are already part of the program or the fellows more in an informal setting. And the next slide also talks a little bit about that. Informal private meetups with residents, that you can have those questions that applicants often feel more comfortable sometimes talking to their peers than they do to program faculty and program directors. You can also set up a time to talk about, there's always a lot of questions, as you all know, about research and scholarly activities, how that's going to be addressed and what that's going to look like, and you can certainly set aside a bit of time for that. And then, you know, do a meet and greet with the program director. Or another thing that we've thought about doing, and we're thinking about incorporating it here, is doing a second look later on after the interview season has started to circle back for applicants to have them come back and virtually get together, and if they've come up with questions since that time about, in addition to the ones that were answered when they did interview, that's a good less formal setting that they've made feel more comfortable, and they get that chance to follow up those questions that they may still be having, trying to make up their mind about the direction they want to go in.
And one of the things that we did for the within our promotional video is that as we started gathering more questions that were asked a lot, you know, many times we end up answering the same questions over and over again in interviews, and that takes a big chunk of time. We just put them on the promotional video, sent that out before the video interview so that we asked them to look at it beforehand. And it's one of those things we would always ask them, did you get a chance to look at the video we sent you? If they tell us, oh, sorry, I didn't get a chance to look at it, or they say yes and then ask the same questions that were on there, we know that they weren't really interested in our program. And that is one of the downsides. We don't really go into it much in this webinar, but one of the downsides is that it's so easy and inexpensive to sign on for a webinar for our applicant, I'm sorry, for a video interview for our applicants, that it's no cost to them. So you may find out that you're actually their 13th choice rather than their top 3. There's a cost to you as the program because you're spending your time and effort to interview them, but there's much less of a cost to the applicant, and so that does make it a little one-sided there. So moving on a little bit, so part of the problem that we have here, as Marcia's just been saying, how do we decide on some of the intangible things? And we keep hearing this idea of, oh, well, we should be doing a holistic review. We hear a lot about that within our comms and for application to medical school. How do we do a holistic review, especially now? As you know, you can see on here the update from the NBOME that the COMLEX 2PE has been canceled for this year. And if anybody saw the announcement that just came out yesterday that the NBME has completely canceled the Step 2 CS for 12 to 18 months. We wonder if the NBOME is going to follow. So that was one more thing that we used to have in a quote unquote holistic review. We used to have, we still have MSPEs, but now what do the MSPEs mean? The Dean's Letters, when some of our students have ended up having online rotations, and we don't know what that means. And now the lack of in-person interviews. Well, there are some places that are trying to find some ways to work with some of these things. And we just want to very briefly mention a couple of these. One of these is called Casper. You may have heard of this. It's made by the folks at McMaster's University that created the multiple mini interview that some schools are using. But they created an online version that really looks at the non-cognitive attributes of an individual, like communications, ethics, empathy, judgment, motivation, professionalism, and those kind of things. This is currently being utilized in the UME world for application into medical schools, and the students do it online beforehand. They send it off to the schools that they're interested in applying to. And so there's been kind of a question about, well, is there something that Casper can do to help the GME community? And so I actually called them last week and talked with them and wanted to pass this on to you, that they are actually undergoing a pilot test right now, which is their Casper Suite for GME. It's 3 different tests. One's a situational judgment test, which is similar to what they did for the undergrads or for the medical students. This Casper Fit, which is a way to measure alignment within your own GME program. You kind of put in what's important to you, and they help to just to align that. And this Casper Snapshot, which is kind of like what we talked about beforehand, that introductory interview where you can kind of see a snapshot video of them answering just a couple of questions. They wanted to let me know. I get no kickbacks from them. There are no nothing like that. But they are doing. They are looking for GME programs that are interested in being part of this pilot. And so I put on here their email and website. If you're interested in looking at it, you'll get the access to the results, but because it's a pilot, they haven't validated those results yet, as they have with the other pool for the pre-med applicants. There is a cost to the program to participate in the pilot. So I want you to know this isn't a free pilot. If you're interested in doing it, talk to them and they'll tell you about what the costs are. But there may be some people that are interested in doing this. There are some other products that are out there. This probably has the most research behind it from what I can tell. The AACOM is working on something called the SJT, their situational judgment test. Right now it's being piloted just for the UME world. I did not find any mention of an application within the GME world yet, but I think this is part of what we're all looking for, is that how can we assess our applicants if we can't do it in the way that we used to do it. We hear that quite a bit from our cutting specialties. And while this is certainly not ready for prime time, there's been some discussion in the literature about how video games might be utilized for training surgeons in the current world. And there's some question about, well, maybe we can assess their hand skills by some types of online video games. Again, this isn't ready for prime time, but it's something that might be in the future if this type of application process continues. So there is, the AACOM just put out a white paper on tips for program directors. I have the link on here. It's about an 8 to 10 page overview. It talks about a lot of what we've talked about here, but goes into some other pros and cons of live versus asynchronous interviews, and how to prepare both applicants and interviewers for the process. This just came out within the last couple of weeks, so I wanted to let you know about this as well. Marcia?
Same thing. The AACOM has also come out for the virtual interviews applicant preparation guide. And I think one of the takeaways that we have want to offer our encouragement for applicants as they move into virtual interviews is please remember two things: prepare and practice before you encounter any of your interviews, and then treat it like it's a real interview, because it is. It's going to come across, even virtually, if you're really not interested, and that's just wasting everyone's time. Please be sure to act and dress professionally. We've had instances in the past with TIGMR interviewees that have not come to their interview in a professional dress. So please remember that that's an important aspect of it. Just as if you were walking into the building to meet with multiple stakeholders for your interview, same thing.
And Marcia, I have to tell them about our worst case scenario. We had an applicant who for a residency program, who was just out of the shower wearing a spaghetti strap tank top and fuzzy slippers with the computer balancing on her knees and her cat running around the bed. She was sitting on her bed. She was chewing gum and she was yelling at her boyfriend off in the distance. Needless to say, it didn't matter what she said in answering our questions, she was not offered a spot. And so I think for our students that are on there, please understand that it makes a difference that you're acting professionally, even though it looks like it's on social media.
Yeah, and for our interviewers, you just have to maintain, you never know what you're going to run up against, and so that professionalism goes both ways, and you can always have those conversations once that interview has ended, because rest assured, we did have a conversation after that one ended. Yeah. Again, when I was talking about prepare and practice, test your equipment beforehand over and over again. So not so much because there may be technical difficulties or issues, but you're comfortable in turning on and off the video and the audio and going to different aspects on your screen. Just, it's like second nature. The practice will also help you figure out the placement of your camera depending on the laptop that you're using. Eye level is the best placement, but you can tell that by just practicing and looking at your videos that you've recorded. Try to maintain eye contact with the camera. I know it's kind of second nature when you're looking at someone to look down, but it's the same thought process if you're in an in-person interview. You want that interviewer to know that you're interested and engaged in what they're talking about. Make sure that you minimize distractions before, and things come up inadvertently, but if you can get in front of that beforehand, there's less opportunity for any kind of background noise to pop up during your interview process. And the biggest thing is be authentic. Show the interviewers, give them a sense of your true self, your true values. Sell yourself, highlight selling points in your own voice about yourself, and be enthusiastic. If this is something that you really are interested in a program that you've taken the time to set up the interview for, show that enthusiasm, because they're going to remember that when they go back through the list of applicants and go, yes, I remember this individual, and that's part of the reason why. And again, I can't emphasize enough, I sound like a broken record: prepare, and then practice.
And so much of this that Marcia just talked about, which is advice for interviewees, is very applicable for us as interviewers as well. It's distracting for the interviewee if they're seeing things in our background, if there are pets and pop-ups and all of those kind of things. So we should pay some heed with that as well. But on the mode of practicing, for our students that are on the line and those from COM, some of you may have heard of some of these programs. This is called the Big Interview. This is an interview prep program, and I always hesitate to try to uh, to sell students on yet something else that they're going to have to pay for in their preparation for licensure. I've not used this myself. I've talked to some people and some programs that do. There are some comms that are getting licenses for this for all of their students. Otherwise, students can pay for it themselves. And it is focused on, it has a focus on which residency specialty you're interviewing for. It gives you practice, gives you coaching on how to best interview. And so that might be something to take a look at. And also, as you start thinking about, oh my gosh, for our students, how are we going to figure out where we want to go? And for our programs, how are we going to attract students that we wouldn't otherwise have? I want to direct everybody to our AOGME Virtual Residency Fair that we're hosting on Friday, August 14th. It's from 1 to 9 p.m. And this is something that AACOM has been doing for applicants to comms for 3 years now, where they've gotten hundreds, if not up to 1,000 people that have come on, and there will be breakout sessions for the different programs. This is an opportunity for you to potentially have a large audience that you can start to sell your program, especially since we're not having our actual residency fairs that we'd be traveling around for, which is kind of unfortunate. So we're open to questions, and we have a couple of questions that have already been posed that I wanted to bring up. A couple of folks here have talked about something that was certainly a big concern for us, because setting up these interviews is so easy. For the applicant. Many of you were like us, especially when we switched over from AOA accreditation to ACGME accreditation. We were deluged with applications where we'd have sometimes up to 100 applicants for every one open spot that we would have. And because it was so easy to set up an interview, and like I said, whereas if we were like the 13th choice for an applicant, they would usually just cancel that and say, oh no, I'm fine. But because there was no real cost to it besides the hour, and we were just doing it for an hour, for the most part, people would go through with that. And so it was I mean, Marcia and I lived and breathed these interviews for a long time, and realized that there were a whole lot of people that were just not interested in our program. And it's understandable. Our students are all worried about worst case scenario, and so they want to have that 13th in line option because they just don't know what's going to happen. And so screening is really important here. And this is one of those things where utilizing an introductory video, like one of those 2 or 3 minute videos that we talked about, it could be something that's important for you to get a general idea, where you could standardize a couple of questions. These days, you could even have students do that on their smartphone and email it to you. There are programs that will do it in a more private way of going about that, but it would be a little easier to do that. But I agree with both Tim and Martin, who had mentioned on here that a whole lot of people are just going to go through with the interview, even if they're not all that interested, and that poses a difficulty for us on the GME side. We're all dealing with shortages and not enough faculty to go around, and that makes it very difficult for us. So I'd like to open it up for other questions at this point in time. Let me see if there's anything else that's been posed yet here. Fred mentioned the cancellation of the COMLEX PE2 is applicable to the class of 2021. Well, so we're still waiting to find out what the final results are going to be as far as what the NBOME says. The announcement from the NBME for the USMLE CS2 was made yesterday. We're still waiting for Dr. Gempel and the group to tell us what the implications are for COMLEX 2 PE and what that's going to mean for all of us. Just before this webinar, I saw some emails going across from COCA that COCA is watching this, because right now it's a requirement to pass that to graduate. It's also a licensure requirement. So I'm sure Dr. Chowdhury and the folks at the FSMB are going to be looking at this and determining whether we as residency directors can obtain physician in training license for our new residents, even if they haven't gone through all 3 portions of the licensure exam cycle at that point in time. So stay tuned. We'll find out more. I'm sure there'll be additional announcements as time goes on. We're almost out of time here. Are there any other questions that anybody would like to pose? either on the Q&A or let's see if there's any on the chat. Oh, there are some on the chat. Sorry about that. I had missed those earlier. Okay, so what particular factors in an interviewee's behavior help to determine that they were not interested in the program? Honestly, and Marcia, feel free to chime in, but for us, it was their general demeanor. It was whether they cared enough to get dressed up and to watch the introductory video, to know something about our program. The other program directors that are out there, they know that we get deluged with all of these form emails from hundreds and hundreds of people that say oh, I'm very interested in you because of your great scholarly activity, when we know that that's not something that they've ever seen before. So make sure that it's a personalized approach to the program.
I think that's one of the things to keep in mind is it's the same thing that you're doing now, and that same gut feeling that you have as you're interviewing applicants, that's going to carry over. That's not going to change, and you're going to be able to discern quickly those people that, like Dr. Mohr just mentioned, that are just doing it like, okay, I'm going to interview another, here's another program that I can interview and mark that off. So what you're doing now, whether it's virtual or in person, that same feeling you're going to know.
So another question from Annie about whether we recommend a white backdrop or some wall decor, and you can show some personality that way. I think you have to be careful. You want to make sure that the focus is on you and your responses, and not something that's going to detract from that. I've seen some people put videos on there like they're on a beach and the waves are going behind them. That might not be the best thing to do. I've seen other people put themselves in the middle of a cartoon or a Marvel comics or those kind of things. I think your best case is going to be something that's plain, that does not detract from them focusing on you. And we probably have time for one or two other questions here. I did get the question from Bryson, and having been a former COSGP chair myself, we're always happy to help you guys. So we'll reach out offline and talk with you for anything that we can do to help. Let's see. Okay, so last question here is from Greg, and he said, "I'm worried that the virtual tours won't give me a clear picture of the culture of a program. Even if it does, I'm not sure how to judge how accurate the pictures are. Other than the possible mixer event you mentioned, do you expect there will be virtual ways for students with interviews to talk with people in a program, to ask questions or get a sense of the personalities and culture? Or will residency fairs have to fill that role?" I think the residency fairs may help a little bit. This is going to be one of the most difficult things for both the programs and for the applicants. I would say that I've heard that some of the programs are finding ways that offline, separate from the interview, they're having opportunities for folks to log on with the residents, and we'll set aside some evenings where we get 3 or 4 of the residents and ask them to say 3 to 5 things about what they like about the program, and then allow people to answer questions, and do that several times. We're doing that for our for our medical school, which we're doing virtual accepted students fairs, and they've been well attended. I think that that's something that would probably be acceptable and might be very helpful. I don't think that there will be a dinner or a lunch per se, but I think doing some sort of an informal meeting with the residents would be something that I would think that most program directors would be very interested in. With that said, I think that we're out of time, and I wanted to thank everybody for tuning in here. I hope we helped out a little bit, and I know this was a very diverse audience, and we tried to touch on a few things for everybody that was here. We do wish everybody the best of luck, and we hope that that somehow we can all make this through this together. And we also hope that as we do things that are well received and go well, that we share that with each other, so that in future years we'll be able to do best practices and improve all of our programs. So once again, we thank you all, appreciate it, and hope you have a great day. Take care.